Hello, everybody, and welcome to Dot to Dot. I hope everybody had a happy and safe holiday and Happy New Year. Welcome to the year 2023. So, today I'm going to talk about the Royston Cave and the number 1347, which was shown on the Curse of Oak Island. And this is the brick in which the numbers 1347 are inscribed into. And the 1347 has significance to myself and Olivier at Oak Island Research because it is part of the Rochefoucauld map, which has in writing the number 1347. Now, obviously, this is not going to be what we think it is in the vault theory, which is a distance, but it is a date. And the date, we don't know why the date is there, but it's the same date or the same number that is on the Rochefoucauld map. And that's why we're so interested in this. So the information that I'm going to use today comes from this publication, which was published in 1904. And it is about the reinvestigation of the Royston Cave in 1852 by a man named Joseph Beldum and his friend Edmund Nunn, who was the curator of the Royston Museum. So here, what Beldum did is he made these plates or drawings, of the Royston Cave. And here below is a actual picture of the Royston Cave. And you can see here is the figurine with the wheel. This is not a mermaid. This is an effigy of Saint Catherine, who is holding the Saint Catherine's wheel. But I wanted to show you, this is actually, the plates are arranged here on the way you would see them in the cave. So the figures and the carvings are in this position, from left to right, right to left. And this is St. Catherine, you can see. And here's this big sword right here. Now, if you look at that sword, I don't see it as, he says it's a flowering sword. I see it as a three-lobed pummel that is on a sword. He says this is not a sword, he said this is a cross, basically representing the original cross of crucifixion for Christ. So this is, you can see that the figures up here have a little bit more artistic, drawing of their faces, or a little more realistic, but the positioning and the content is fairly accurate. So the cave was discovered in 1742. And a Reverend George North took it upon himself to go down into the cave. It was filled with debris at first. He took some men and went down there and removed all the debris in a way that would not be acceptable to archaeology, let's just say. And then Dr. Stuckley went down there, and he basically was just looking at this with candlelight. So there wasn't very much light coming in from the opening, But the point that I want to make here is that he did speak of the masonry that was in the top of the dome. So the masonry wasn't put there afterwards, after it was discovered. It was there when it was discovered. So it was original. Now, there was several entrances to this cave. There was a north side entrance, and there was also a entrance on the east. And it was speculated by Dr. Stuckley that the masonry was to conceal the opening of the shaft on the east because it had not been disturbed. And he said that it may have been the original descent, in other words, the original shaft, after the second shaft had been made. So here is a picture of a close-up of the carvings in Royston Cave. Two comments I want to make about this is the heart in the palm. The earliest original reference that I can find about this iconography is that it was during the time of the Reformation, early times of the Reformation, which would be around in the 1500s. And I believe this cave may have been used for people seeking to go and pray or worship in a way that was secret. Because as you know, being a Huguenot or a Protestant in the medieval periods or even in the 1500s was not very well received. Even into the 1600s, they were still rounding up Protestants and taking them away, and who knows what they did with them. Another thing that I want to point out, here's that long sword here, and you can see the lobes. It looks more to me like three-lobed pommel, which would indicate a Viking sword. And one of the things that I find interesting about this whole overall carvings here is that the culture that it's coming from, or the picture that it's trying to show you, is the genealogy or the lineage of the Normans, the Anglo-Normans who for a long time occupied England and France, and they were split in many different ways between their own people and the French and the people that eventually became the Anglo-Saxons of England. But these are the conclusions that were made by Beldum, that what the actual cave was. He basically said that it may have been something prior to Christianity and was built by Roman or British Roman construction. He also speculates that it may have been used as a Roman sepulcher. But he definitely says that about the time period of the Crusade is where it was used the most, and it was used for basically religious rites or religious worship, and it was then converted to a Christian oratory, and where people basically would be hermits or stay there for long periods of time and do whatever they do. And it remained open until the Reformation, and it was finally filled up and forgotten. So this is the first plate that he drew, and I'll go over this briefly. It would be best, and I'll leave a link in the description for this article so you can read it. But we'll start over here. This is Beldum says this is the effigy of Saint Catherine. And down here, according to the crowns, the styles of the crowns that they're wearing and their clothes, he says this is most likely King Richard I or Richard the Lionheart. And then we have here, another crucifixion thing. And right here is the disputed shield. Now it's on. I'll show you this later, but this is actually the shield of King Henry II, which was the father of Richard I. And this is a bunch of people. He says these are genealogical figures of people associated with the priory in Royston that has a lot to do with also the Norman culture. But I believe it may be also a reference to the lineage of King Henry II and Richard I. Up here we see a very interesting, the hand of God releasing a dove. Now, if you remember back in one of my previous videos, the dove is also a symbol that comes from the Cathar which was basically in the late 1200s, was the Gnostic belief system that was growing as a heresy, and they were actually persecuted by the church and pretty much eliminated by the Catholic Church in the south of France. And it's interesting that this is here, but also we have the hand with the heart on it, which we believe is pretty much talking about charity and also the Reformation. It's also noted that the hand and the heart is a Masonic symbol, and alluding to this may be Templar related. I don't think it is specifically a Templar place of meeting. I think that perhaps some of the Templars had these religious beliefs and that they were maybe using it at some point, but I don't think it's wholly and specifically exclusive as a Templar place of worship or a Templar place of meeting. Over here is Saint Christopher carrying the Christ child across the River Jordan. So here's another, this is the other plate. Now this is starting over here. This is right here, Norman architecture. And this is, according to Beldum, this is Eleanor, Queen of Aquitaine, who was the wife of Henry II. And Henry II had her imprisoned, so she's in prison. And here is, he says this is John the Baptist and St. Thomas Becket. Now, St. Thomas Becket and King Henry II were very much in a feud about the authority of the courts, and Henry II and him were friends, but then they had the falling out about the court system. He said something that was mistaken out of context, and his men went out and killed Thomas Becket. And I think this is basically giving some kind of an apology or something of forgiveness of sins for his death. And this, of course, is King Henry II, the soldiers that he led. And this is a bishop, which I believe was a relative of his time. And this is basically right over here. This is supposed to be William the Lion, King of Scots, who also had run-ins and conflicts with Henry II. And this is supposed to be St. Lawrence with his grill, which is how he died. He was grilled to death. But I think this also may be a reference to Jacob and Jacob's ladder. And King William, King of Scots, is coming out of the stone of Jacob, which is the stone that Jacob rested his head on. And this is how the King of Scotland was basically crowned. He was crowned using the stone of Jacob, which, by the way, ended up in England and actually is used to this day for the coronation of kings and queens in England. And over here, he says that this is perhaps the conversion of St. Paul. I don't see it right here. This is a Viking or early shield and a sword. St. Paul didn't use those things. I believe this is all one. And this is, he says this is the cross of St. Helena. Remember, this is the three-pommeled, the Viking sword that I showed before that had the three lobes. And this perhaps could represent Rollo, his wife, and William. His wife would be the Duchess of Normandy, who was French, and Rollo being a Viking, and this would be William, their son, William the First, who was called William Longsword. So I think this is a reference to William Longsword. And this is all referencing the lineage of the Normans, because Rollo was the progenitor of the Normans. He was the beginning of it. So here's the other plate, which shows basically just single little drawings of all the different things that were in the cave. Here's the 1347. It's also wasn't mentioned in the episode of the Curse of Oak Island that there was also another date, which was 1350, and there was a little pipe, clay pipe, found with a fleur-de-lis in it. But these are all different, basically apparel that he drew very specifically in order to show, I think, the dates of the time of the apparel, the similarity to the apparel of the date in which he believes these carvings were drawn, and the style. So the explanation of the 1347 is very long and detailed, and you can pause it here and read this. I'm just going to briefly go over it. Is basically that Stuckley did not, he wasn't aware of the 1347 carving into the brick because of the light, and Beldum finds that there was really no motive to attempt any kind of deception. The thing that comes up the most is the peculiarity of the form of the number 4, because this is a transitional form. Prior to basically the 14th century or the 15th century, the number 4 took on many transitions. And the modern form that we have, the angular form of the 4, is in somewhat dispute and when it came about, but really nobody knows. He states in his document that there is proof that there is certain writings that are done during the time period that shows that the number 4 could have been used during that time period of the mid 14th century. He also says that that the principal entrance was used, that the blocks themselves, the bricks, were used as a way to basically conceal the eastern entrance, and that also that the painting of the bricks, because they were not red brick, they were painted chalk bricks, was also a color that was used during the reign of King Edward III, which was about the time period of 1347. And also that the cave, even though it did not really get inspected very well the first time, that the dome had not been opened at the time to the surface, and there was no reason why the 1347 was not made during the time period in which it denotes, which is 1347. So one of the things that I also attributed the 1347 date to was the maybe referencing the Black Death. But I'm finding that that's probably not the case, because in 1347, or even maybe a century afterwards, they had no way of knowing when the Black Plague started, or when, we don't even know today hardly when things actually get going. But in our history, that the Black Plague didn't hit England till 1348. And it really didn't erupt in Europe until October 1347. So 1347, Beldum says that marks the date in which this cave was closed. Now my question is why was it broken open? Why did the entrance need to be enlarged and then bricked back up? Perhaps something was taken out of the cave? We don't know. But it was commemorated by the date 1347. That's all I have for you tonight. Thank you very much for watching. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. And have a great evening. Bye.